4.6 Part 2, now examples 5 and 6, starts us out with the number 5. This is y is equal to the inverse tangent of 0. Well, remember, take the inverse, so this means that 0 is equal to tangent of y. So we're looking for what angle can we take the tangent of that's going to give us 0. We'll also remember that it tells us that tangents, or the inverse tangent, its answers have to be between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So it's like the inverse sine. So from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So it's the same thing. The only difference is negative pi over 2 and pi over 2 are not included. That's where our asymptotes are in the original graph. So therefore, our answer can't be either one of those, but it's any number in between them. Again, if we get a quadrant 4 angle on our unit circle, remember, just subtract 2 pi to get an angle that will be within the interval that we're looking for. All right, so that means we're looking in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. Now, but this one's weird because tangent's not positive or negative. Tangent here is 0. So we're really going to have to kind of investigate this. So remember that tangent is equal to y over x. And the only way that this can be equal to 0 is if the y value here is 0. So on your unit circle between negative pi over 2 and positive pi over 2, where is y going to be 0? And that's going to be right there on the x-axis. So what is that angle right there? That angle is 0 radians. So our answer, y equals the inverse tangent of 0, is equal to 0 radians. Now you could write radians, and I might recommend it on this one just since I don't want you to get confused in the different zeros that we have here. So, but remember, as long as you don't put a degree symbol, that means it's in radians. All right, and then number 6. So number 6 tells us that we're looking for y equals the arctan of the negative square root of 3. All right, so this means that the negative square root of 3 is equal to tangent of what angle? Well, remember, inverse tangent, we're only looking in quadrants 1 and 4. And tangent is negative in which of those? Quadrant 4. And if you're wondering, I didn't specify, hopefully you figured it out, but remember we talked about all students take calculus, and this told us where they're positive at, all of them in quadrant 1, sine and its reciprocal in quadrant 2, tangent its reciprocal in quadrant 3, cosine and its reciprocal in quadrant 4. So that's where I'm pulling out where the tangent or the sine or the cosine has been positive or negative. I assumed you understood that, but I just realized I better clarify it. All right, so, well, when we look at tangent, remember tangent is y over x. So we may have to do a little work to figure out which one of these is going to give us a square root of 3 or negative square root of 3. So if you look in quadrant 4, you've got 2 ordered pairs that have a square root of 3 or negative square root of 3. Or I'll have, let me clarify that, sorry. Have a square root of 3 over 2 in them, so it includes a square root of 3. So we have the ordered pair, the square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Or it's going to be from the ordered pair 1/2 and negative square root of 3 over 2. So which one of those two is going to give us a negative square root of 3? Well, if you're unsure, you can just do your y over x on both of them. So for the first one, I would do y over x. And you can either do keep it, change it, flip it, or remember you can multiply by the little denominator. And so when I do that, the denominators cancel, and I got negative 1 over the square root of 3. If I rationalize that, I'm going to get the negative square root of 3 over 3, which is not what we're after. So this ordered pair, I do not believe is going to give us our answer. But let's check the other one. So if I do y over x, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply by that little denominator. And so I get the negative square root of 3 over 1, which is our negative square root of 3. So the angle that has this ordered pair is going to be my solution. So which angle was that? So it was negative pi over 3. Whoops, I'm sorry. It is actually, if you look at it, remember it says, so say 5 pi over 3, but that's not on our unit circle. I'm sorry, that is on our unit circle. It's not in our interval. So subtract 2 pi, and that gives us that negative pi over 3. Now, an easier way to do this is if it is a whole number, well, not whole number, but if it's not a fraction, if I ended up with just a negative square root of 3 or positive square root of 3, I need square root of 3 to be on top of my fraction, which on top of your fraction for this one would mean the y value has that square root of 3 in it. So then we could have just used that to shortcut it and know, okay, well then it must be the 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2, which would have been my 5 pi over 3. Just a little shortcut so you don't have to do both of them and work it out, because sometimes we're not lucky, like we weren't here, and our first one didn't work. Sometimes our first one works and we're like, okay, that's the answer, but sometimes it doesn't. All right, so I hope that little shortcut will help you.